All right, so welcome back to TingleCon 2021. Today we are back here with our storytelling panel. We actually have three really talented ASMR artists here. We have Whisperwind Sage, Tinglesmith ASMR, and also Theyseekherthere ASMR. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. In fact, why don't we just go ahead and jump into this? I have a ton of questions here from the audience and a lot of stuff that I also wanted to ask you as well. Let's just begin here with this first question. I think it'll lead us into this one. Who are your favorite ASMR artists right now? And which ASMR artists are you getting inspiration from right now as well? Who wants to lead off?
Oh, that would be a very long list indeed. I think we could spend the entire interview, Nathan, if we went for that.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. I think you've got inspiration for pretty much all of the. I pretty much follow everybody, and I think I get inspiration from virtually everybody's channel, especially the people who I collab with. I think that's a great way to play off each other is when you all work together. Which is,
I will say that I find so many people that I admire, and anytime that I feel like I want to get better, I know those people are inspiring me and making me a better creator. And I find that with a lot of different creators. So just even having that in the community as an overhanging thing for me is huge.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's a lot of different channels out there that do storytelling and do really amazing role plays. And there are several channels that I've been really inspired by. And then those people have turned into really good friends, which is something that's really cool about the ASMR community. So I think, building those friendships with people and then you kind of inspire each other and build each other up is really awesome.
Fantastic. That's what I just wanted a little bit of a love fest there, because it is TingleCon. So it's important to start off with, because I think
totally.
ASMR artists definitely you learn from each other and you can make great friendships and creatively grow together. I think that's such an important part of ASMR, and especially in the storytelling realm where you do see a lot of these collaborations and things like that. So let's get into the real meat of it. And I think that I just wanted to start you off with an easy one there, but why don't we start off with something a little deeper? What is storytelling for you? And is there something different about telling stories through ASMR that you think is different from or unique from other styles?
Yes, storytelling. It's incredibly important, isn't it? I mean, it's really pretty much the essence of being human. In my opinion, history, everything, it comes down to this. Even the words I'm using right now are just echoes of somebody who wanted to express their feelings. You can have to be thinking about this a little bit. And just so fundamental, I guess, to the human experience. When you think about it, even when we go to sleep at night, our mind stays awake, telling us stories. That's just how much we're addicted to it. So, yeah.
Totally. As far as like ASMR and storytelling, I think it's a really wonderful medium to explore storytelling in because it's something where you're already focused on every single little detail because it's down to the quietest sounds and the slightest little things and all of the hand movements and all of that stuff. Like you're already as a viewer focusing on that. And so adding storytelling in there, it's such an amazing medium to help people really be transported into the story. Like that's for me something that storytelling, like a good story, I can picture myself there and I can like become enveloped in the story. And that's something that I think ASMR lends itself really well to.
I would say ASMR has some rules, but storytelling as like an open medium, this is probably one of the best because it doesn't have so many hard and fast rules. And that is what begets great storytelling, is when you have interpretation, an open place to play. And I think that is what attracts me to that kind of ASMR, the storytelling aspect of ASMR so heavily, is because you do get to play. It is such an open place.
And it's very different as well, isn't it? If you, the viewer is often the central character, where bit parts are working around the character. So I think that in itself makes it quite a unique, it's also quite a new, I guess, medium that we are playing in. But that's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, I almost feel like with that, you can work with the viewer to create the story together, right? Not many places where you can leave a dead silence and then someone can fill that silence in with their own imagination. Or, you know why you're coming to this cyberpunk scrub market, memory erase place. I'm just the bit character. I'm the bit character. I'm going to help you out with it, but I don't know why you've come here. I don't know where you're going to go afterwards. That's all to you, I guess. So it can be quite collaborative in some ways. But yes. Yeah.
And I actually wanted to, can I just add one thing here? Because I'm actually realizing there's an audience question here that is literally very related to this, that to the point where I think I should just ask it. Do you find, and this is from Atlas ASMR, do you find ASMR an effective medium for storytelling? And what synergies do you see between them? I think, Paul, you kind of touched on that, and but just to really hammer it in there.
Yeah, well, given that is the master storyteller himself, Atlas, I think he could answer it for us, right? But as you say, yeah, it's a unique, great medium. Where you can effectively write things together, definitely. Right. I think it's an interesting one as well, because you can capture imagination using both your costumes and also your the world that you've got. I personally find it quite nice when you have like something to play off, because it makes you feel almost like you're in the world. But some people, they tell the story before they even speak. Moonlight College, and they just and others, and they just have this remarkable aesthetic. And then you hear the dialogue, you hear the script. Oh, it's such a fantastic way of telling a story. I think as well, in terms of the medium, one of the things I've had comments before which say this is not ASMR, and I think that's matured my thinking a little bit to think, well, ASMR is definitely a medium, but it's also a feeling. Okay, so I don't think you necessarily, if you watch something and it gives you that feeling of ASMR, it's ASMR, right? And if you watch something in prison, it still could be. So it's both a medium and a feeling. Now, you don't get that from a Western. It's a Western or a thriller. So that's a little bit strange that it's based off a feeling.
Yeah, definitely. No, I've definitely also gotten comments that it's like, well, this was really good, but it's not ASMR. It's like, well, maybe it's not like triggers that you particularly like. But for me, I love the storytelling. For me, like ASMR, I think one of the similarities between ASMR and storytelling is that storytelling for me has been an escape. It's like when the world is hard, I can escape into a book or a movie, and I can just forget about the world for a minute. And like, I get comments like that too, saying like, thanks for giving me an escape from this crazy world for a little while. And I think that can be ASMR, even if it's not storytelling, can be that sort of just like a safe place for someone to be. And especially because ASMR is so personal, like you were talking about, Paul. I mean, it's like the viewer is usually the main character, and we're there just kind of supporting them in their main role, basically. Like it's really cool. It's a really fun way to tell a story.
Oh, very much agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to add anything else there, Theyseekherthere, there, or shall we move on to the next question?
That was, I have nothing else to say. That is
okay. Great, cool. That was really interesting. Yeah, that was really interesting. I'm like, wow, that was pretty enlightening. So let's go ahead and like get into the sort of the creative process here, because I think a lot of people have a lot of questions on that front. But I wanted to just kind of get into the philosophy a little bit there. So how do you go about creating a story and characters from scratch? What is your creative process? Is it different for ASMR than something else? And just to add to that, do you usually start with a story, a character, a place?
I guess for me, it kind of varies. Sometimes it starts with the character and sometimes it starts with the story. because my channel is a little different in that, like, it's not just standalone videos. It's kind of the one overarching story. So I have the story, and then I pick out little elements of what might happen in that story or in the town or something like that, and kind of like go off of that. So yeah, like I kind of already have my setting picked, at least, you know, to a certain extent. And then I go from there. Well, what kind of person would be in this town? What kind of job would they have? What would their life be like? And how could the viewers see that and interact with that and have just a normal day-to-day interaction with this person in a way that is still intriguing and will also kind of like tell the story, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe I rambled a little bit there, but
it makes sense.
Okay.
No, it does. I was going to say it's kind of also 50-50 for me. I have done quite a bit of writing in my life, but I came to ASMR because I'm a cosplayer. So characters are a lot of what I think of first, and how someone's going to look, and how when you first see them, what your impression of them is. So can you get, you know, is that thing that people are looking for with their storytelling ASMR going to get them pulled in? And then I build it from there in all sorts of directions. So it's kind of a mood, whatever I guess I feel like, okay, what are, you know, the next few videos do I have planned out? But then I really think about like centering that character, I think, more, and then building everything else around it.
Yeah, characters are key, aren't they? In terms of how you build the story of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess, sorry, I don't fully remember the question, but I guess it was in terms of
it's basically, how do you go about creating a story and characters from scratch, and what's your creative process? And then I kind of asked at the end, how do you, I guess I was kind of guiding you into it, but essentially, do you usually start with a character or a place or something like that? Or
often, usually, I can start with an idea, I guess. There's the elfin knight stands on yon hill. He blows his horn loud and shrill. That's quite nice, isn't it? I remember it's a Scottish ballad, very, very old. And I remember reading that and thinking, I want to create a character based off that. I want to create some sort of elven based sort of Scottish back in the time sort of thing. So I guess there's loads and loads of different areas that sort of, I'm sure all of us, we get ideas from, right? This is a little bit based off what I've got here. A game called Sunless Skies, which I think is remarkably thematic and excellent like that. But even just different sources, Howard Carter. I did that video based off listening to an old audio file of Howard Carter. It was quite a rare thing. He doesn't speak very often. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice to tell the story? Except actually pass on the story as if you're really there, as if someone's sort of experiencing that. And then there are just little other things like Richard Feynman was a physicist. I don't want to hog this, but Richard Feynman is a physicist.
Okay.
Anecdotes. And I think anecdotes are one of the key ways that you can bring your character to life, right? Mm-hmm. One of the hard things is, again, it's the viewer who's the main person here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
You've got to make sure that they're engaged, but also it's realistic as well. And so I think anecdotes are a great way of doing that. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a situation where you're asking questions, oh, what are your hobbies? Now, obviously, you can't hear the viewer's answer. Right. Do you feed them? Do you say, oh, you like playing chess and you played chess for 10 years. That's very interesting. That sounds quite stilted. Whereas if you have an anecdote that you can share, I think that works quite nicely. One of my characters, Tesla, he did this thing, which Richard Feynman and his father used to play this game called You're an Alien. And he would pretend to be an alien who knew nothing about the Earth at all. And they would start with a concept like Aunt Minnie, she's just slipped and she's in the hospital. And then you'd ask why. And so, well, she slipped on the ice. So that answers it. But it wouldn't answer to this alien. So they ask the next question, which is, why did you slip? Well, because ice is slippery. Why is ice slippery? Well, it's to do with the lattice structure. That's quite an interesting, quite complicated question, but it's to do with pressure and lattice structure. It expands instead of contracts. why does that happen? Now you've got a very interesting question. And you can also go in a different direction. You can talk about why did she fall? Is it gravity? Things like that. So I think little but also long anecdotes help quite a bit, because I think it draws people in. I think one of the things Feynman was trying to say about that was the deeper something becomes, the more interesting it becomes. And I think that's very true of storytelling. And Feynman was an excellent storyteller, even though he wasn't a writer, he was a physicist. I think I might have went off.
No, that was really interesting. Thank you so much. Why don't we move on to the next question, because I want to get through the rest of my questions, and then, like I said, we have a ton of audience questions. So why don't we? And I think this is kind of related to this last question, but how do you pick out your costumes, your sets, your props? You know, and how important is scene setting in ASMR?
If you have
and storytelling.
I think I do a lot of green screen stuff, but if you have the right scene, you feel like you're there. You know, I actually feel like I am in wherever I am in, and you know, you've got your paintings and you've got your props, and it makes, I don't know if you guys feel the same thing, but it makes you feel like an actor. If you're in that costume, it makes you like you're there, and I think that makes the acting a lot easier.
Totally. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
No, go.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Okay. Yeah, I do some green screening things, but I love to have the physical props. I love to have the things actually set up, the things that I can interact with. And you might not even interact with everything in the scene, but it's still there. And it's still like a part of the experience, both for you as an actor and for, you know, the audience, obviously. I love that. It takes a lot of time sometimes, especially like finding the right things or making the right things, especially like, you know, my steampunk props, pretty much all of those I've made, or I've like found things and made them into other things so that they look kind of steampunkish or whatever. So like it is a lot of work. And there are some people who are like, Sage, you know, you put like so much work into this stuff and you probably like wouldn't have to. And I'm like, but like, it's part of the experience. First of all, it's fun for me. I love doing that kind of stuff. And it enriches the experience, I think, personally, for both me and for the viewer. So, yeah. What was the rest of that question?
The question is basically, how do you pick your costume sets, props, and how important is scene setting in ASMR or storytelling in general?
Yeah, I mean, super important. The how for me is mostly like based on my budget. I do a lot of like secondhand shopping, antique shopping, refashioning things, stuff like that. And looking at something and being able to say, okay, well, this is ordinary, but I could do this thing to it and make it look fantastical, or I could make it look steampunk, or I could make it look like it's a medieval bodice or a choker or something like that. So, you know, it does take some creativity, but that's part of the fun.
I quite like that actually as well, because you talk about budget, but ASMR doesn't have to be so high budget.
No, it certainly doesn't.
You are
really not
in a certain space. You don't have to be on location. You don't have to.
Right. Oh, totally.
Recycle your costumes a little bit as well. You can put things on, and if it's about storytelling rather than the other part. But it does bring you in there. But I think that is the beauty, that it doesn't have to be massive budget.
Oh no, totally. I mean, you can start out with I started out with a really small budget and just kind of used what I had around my house to start out with, and then, you know, expanded a little bit at a time to now the point where I have a ton of props. But like, you don't have to.
Yeah, ASMR artists' closets are probably very weird.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think I have more costume clothing than I have like actual real life clothing.
So.
You know what? Can you guys tell me about let's tell me about your, let's say we open up your closet. What are we going to find in there for your ASMR closet? What's going to be
you want a tour? It's right back. No, I'm there's a lot. Yeah, it's I have it organized by like, these are like the main characters, and then these are pieces that could be secondary characters. And I'm always looking when I'm at, you know, thrift stores or wherever, like for pieces that could be like, okay, well, this is obviously a modern top, but it's got, you know, the right kind of neckline, or like I could add the right kind of neckline, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of simple pieces that like you can combine and layer to make different characters. And a lot of very basic pieces that like even just like a plain button down shirt. I can cut the neckline off, I can cut the sleeves, I can cut the buttons and add some lacing, and boom, you have a bodice. So, there's a lot of variety in my closet, but there's a lot of options. It's kind of fun. You open the closet and there's all these wigs and there's like accessories over here. And it's like, who shall we be today? It's fun.
You bring up wigs. Wigs are so hard to store. I have a lot lot of them for various reasons.
They are.
And I'm always like, I'm going to ruin them or something. I one day hope to be as great as scene setting as my fellow panelists here. I personally don't have a lot of room in my life right now. So that's sort of why I've been built out in that direction. But costumes are so key for me because first of all, I love building a costume and making that character off of the costume. Like, what does this say about them? But also when I put it on, it makes me feel like the character. And that is going to sell that story the best. And that's kind of how I approach all costuming, all styling as a person. So that's probably the one holdover I've kept and haven't had, I guess, been able to say, okay, I understand how to do this in some way. How can we bring it into your videos, my videos and things like that? So yeah, I think costumes above all else, making that character, fashioning them, presenting them, that's incredibly centered for me.
Yeah, totally. Because we present a character maybe just for one video and it might be like, oh, these are just the pieces that we have. But that character, they picked out what they were going to wear that day. They looked into their closet or whatever clothing that they have, and they said, I'm going to wear this and I'm going to put this on it. And like, why did they make those choices? Maybe there was a different top that they could have worn and they didn't. Or maybe they don't really care about it. And so they just kind of threw on like, well, it's cold, so I'm going to put on a coat or I'm going to have a vest or something like that. But like every choice that we make for the character is a choice that the character made too. And so it's fun to like think about it in both ways,
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to the next one because we got about just a couple more minutes for my questions, and then we'll jump in these audience questions. But let's see here. Well, let's go with how do you incorporate triggers into your stories? How does that play a role into it?
I must admit, I'm terrible at triggers.
I feel the same way, honestly.
That I use for different.
Or how do you bring the relaxation element into the storytelling? That's
I create myself a template for the different types of role plays that you have. Like, oh, this is a sort of medical doctor role play. Here's the list of what you can do. Mm-hmm. This is a mechanic. This is a list of what you can do. And then I write the story, and then I try to put these little triggers here and there, and then I ultimately fail, and then I go far too fast all the way through the thing, and so I try my best, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a hang up for me sometimes too. Like I'll get so into the story and telling the story that I'm like, wait, I was going to tap on this more and I forgot because I just was, because I think with storytelling especially, you're trying to make ASMR, but you want it to be a realistic encounter with somebody. And so a bartender, while they might like show you a bottle and like talk to you if they're trying to convince you, they're probably not going to like tap on it a whole bunch. And so, I mean, obviously like it's the genre, like you want the tapping and you want the triggers and you want things like that. But sometimes if I get going, I'll kind of forget. I try to, like when I'm sort of outlining a video, I'll like add in, this is where I'm going to do this trigger. This is where I'm going to do that. And sometimes that's a nice thing to do, like with B-roll too, especially like if it's a prop heavy video, you can add in a cut of you holding something and tapping on it more or showing different pieces of things. And that's another way that you can add in triggers.
Great for when an airplane goes over.
Right. Yes.
I hate airplanes.
I know.
Yeah.
So,
Oh no, my answer is very quick. I say
no. Take your time. Take your time. You're good.
Sometimes forget. I really have to. One of the things I found myself doing is thinking about themes, kind of what Paul was saying about. Okay, I know I can do these triggers in this video without it being strange. So I'll try to really center that. Another thing I'm trying to get a little bit more tapped into, and this is sort of why I like ASMR as well, is like playing on that personal connection with the viewer and making them feel safe in a space. Now that's really challenging because you don't know them. You don't know who's watching this video at all, but you have to, I suppose, guess, like get some good guesswork going there. Pick your characters maybe around that for the people you know who are watching, who are going to watch anyway, and then hope that works for a wider audience.
Right. And then just kind of like take one step back and generalize it a little bit more, and then like you're good. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So, okay. So I think this is actually kind of a two-part question. It's going to be my last question, and then we're going to jump into these audience questions here. But for people who, I mean, a lot of the audience here is other ASMR artists, I think. And, you know, I think a lot of them may, or potentially ones who want to become ASMR artists. What would you say to them? Like, perhaps there's some people who have doubts, or they're thinking like, oh, maybe I don't have the money for these costumes, or, you know, maybe I don't have a background in writing or this kind of stuff. What kind of advice would you, but at the same time, they have a dream and they want to make this happen. What would you say to that person? And maybe you could talk about your first video, and maybe it can, you know, talk about that, just sort of, you know, maybe it might make them feel better about doing it.
Well, my first video, my costume was all things that I already owned. And I ended up reshooting it like 5 times because I was so unhappy with all of it. But like looking back on it now, I'm like, it was probably fine. The first time, honestly, it was probably fine. That was more me being nervous and me like being a perfectionist. So I definitely understand that. And I actually, you know, I had this idea for my channel and I kind of started working on it just like in the back of my mind, but I talked myself out of it for 6 months before I started because I didn't feel like I had the right equipment or the right stuff or the right feel yet, or I didn't have it all hashed out yet. And I mean, obviously, like it did help me kind of develop the world a little bit more, that waiting time, but I could have jumped in. I had enough know-how. I had enough of the vibe. And, you know, that's the thing. It's like ASMR is not always about the perfect production value. Sometimes it's just about the heart, and it's just about starting something and just connecting with somebody through a camera. And, you know, that can even just be the camera on your phone. So I think like, especially maybe in the storytelling genre specifically, there is some pressure that like you want to do it right, I guess. But at some point you just got to start, and we're always learning. I mean, I look back at my first videos and I cringe because I've come so far since then. But at that point, it was the best that I could do. But like, even now I'm still learning and I still feel like my videos are improving, and, you know, like we all start somewhere. So just go for it. Just start.
I'm 100% still learning. I've not been making ASMR for even a year yet. Embarrassingly. The first video I made was, I actually have been watching for ASMR for years, and I thought, okay, maybe I should try this, and didn't really know what to do. The first video I made was not a storytelling video. Interestingly, it was a affirmations video with like basic triggers, like hair brushing and personal attention for Bisexuality Awareness Month, because I am queer, and I thought it would be great to talk to other people who maybe were, you know, needed that support. Support ASMR is a huge thing as well, even in storytelling, like I was saying before, you know, reaching out to a person and figuring out how you can connect with them through this. So that was it was very interesting. I really tried to start basic so I could kind of find my way. And then very shortly after that, jumped into characters. And now, obviously, I prefer that. 90% of my videos are a character. And I will say I'm always trying to learn, absolutely. just as I say in other places, I suppose in my life, when people ask me about things, just start. Perfection is sort of a monster. It is not. It is not a helpful. I know we want to always be perfect, but also asking for help in this community is a really key thing. I think a lot of people are very open to responding and lending advice. And I would say don't be afraid to ask for help when you start learning, because that is how you get better.
Mm-hmm. Also, I was just thinking as you were talking, a quote it's actually from a TV show, but he said, okay, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like the first step of like being kind of good at something is sucking at something. Mm-hmm. But if you suck at it, then the next time you'll be a little bit better. And then the next time you'll be a little bit better. And so not that like you're going to suck when you start, but like if you feel like, oh, I'm going to suck. Well, if you don't try, then you're never going to get to improve. So just start. Mm-hmm.
I guess I would say very few things succeed from a standing start. And I think it would be nice to build up your skills from the start if you're starting out. My thought would be, if you create a video, don't release it. You sit on that video. Maybe create 2 or 3 videos. You want a little bit of a backlog before you launch, in my opinion, so that you're developing your skills as you edit these videos and also as you film them. But just in general, I think it's nice to have that little bit of a backlog before you kick off. But I would echo what has been said already. You don't necessarily need a massive budget to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. My first video, I didn't release actually for like 3 months. I released loads of other videos first. So my first video isn't my first video. And I remember thinking, I've got to get this in one take. Airplane goes ahead 10 minutes later. I'm like, one take. I refuse to have cutaways. Oh, that's a bit of a waste of time, because I think I would prefer to see 5 great videos from somebody than 1 perfect video. And you will find yourself down the line thinking, oh, I really wish I'd known these things when I even released my video, when I edited my video. I knew nothing of color grading, all that sort of stuff. So recording these, Tom Scott, I think he's called, has a very interesting video about why you don't want to be a one-hit wonder. And the logic behind that is if you really make it big the first time, often you don't have any back catalog. And so you haven't developed the skills that you potentially need. You haven't got ideas or things that you can rely on, or the things that you pull together. And it can be more detrimental than it can be beneficial. So I think just start. Don't go from a standing start. Build things up slowly. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And then when you feel ready with a little bit of a backlog, then go for it. What's the worst that's going to happen there?
Yeah.
Awesome. That was a really, really great message. Thank you so much for sharing with us there. Let's go ahead and jump into these audience questions, because I think some of them are a bit different from the direction I was kind of going in. And I think, I think you might also like them. So let's start with the first. I'm just going to actually feel them in the order that we receive them. So we did ask one question earlier because it was basically the same question. But here we go. The first one is from Jess K Creative ASMR. And the question is, of the stories you've...
Sorry.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
There's going to be some brilliant storytellers. I mean, Nathan, yourself, you're a good storyteller. It would be very
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
These things as well, because, oh my goodness, I'm going to embarrass myself here and say Walter Raleigh when it was Francis Drake, but that video was absolutely brilliant. And, I just think your storytelling itself is fantastic. So
thank you so much. I would say, just for my own experience, I mean, I learned from all of you folk. I think a lot of the people here, in fact, the people who've asked these questions, I can say like almost all of them are people that I consider to be like my inspiration as well. And just, whether I'm learning color grading and that kind of stuff from Atlas, or I'm learning how to do more relatable characters with Amy K and Jess K Creative. She has great historical role plays. So, and also all 3 of you as well. I love your channels, and that's something for me that really helps. And with the Sir Walter Raleigh, I come from an educational, informative side. So I like to just throw in that little educational aspect as well. So that's something that we will talk about in another panel as well. I think that's all tied in there. And so let's jump into this Jess K creative question, because again, I think this is really interesting. Of the stories you've told via ASMR, which one is your favorite and why? And I'm actually going to add a second part here. What's your favorite time period to write in?
Picking a favorite is really hard. I don't know if I can do that, but I have I have really started I have like a series that I started, and part of it is the character is immortal. So she's at different periods of time. And the 30s, 40s is what I've been really gravitating towards, because I like dressing characters for that time period. And then she's not a real person in history in those. So I can kind of play with, the period, what's going on in the background. One of them is like a World War II, something's happening, she's a resistance person in World War II. So that's really fun. I really like kind of peripheral characters in these like big historic times that they're every people, they're you and me if we were there, and you can kind of just pluck them and say, okay, understand what's going on around them, but then how would these people be living? And then how would, your viewer be there as well? That's been really fun for me because I've never really had a chance to do that before, even in like normal writing, fiction writing, or anything like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I guess if I was going to go generic, I would say eccentric characters. Who is the fifth wizard? That would be Gandalf. That would be Radagast the Brown. Is he good? Says Bilbo Baggins. And I think I like eccentric characters who are a little bit they're not concerned about the world around them. Possibly because they don't even know the world around them is even I like a character who has some sort of power to them, which is not obvious, more modest in that regard. So I think I do quite enjoy more eccentric characters. I liked doing my Tesla a lot and my wizard a lot.
I love your wizard. He's so fun.
That Tesla one is amazing too. Yeah.
I was going to say Tesla's
great.
Tesla's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like doing those. Thank you. I like doing those because honestly, they're just like a slightly more exaggerated version of me. So I don't have to act too much. It becomes quite natural for that reason. And they're well requested, which I like because it means I can do recurring characters. Mm-hmm. And I just hope people don't get bored of them. But yes, I think fantasy, and I do like steampunk as well a lot. But yes.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't know. My favorite. I like playing characters that have secrets. And even if like they don't come out in the video, I know what their secrets are as I'm playing them. And it might just be like tiny little hints here and there. And because a lot of characters on my channel are recurring, it might be like a tiny little hint in this video and a tiny little one in that one and a tiny little one. And if you're somebody who like watches the majority of my videos, then at the end, when their like secret is actually revealed, it's like, poof, I love that. Oh, I love that. I love the mind blowing moments. But yeah, I like playing characters who are there with you in that moment, but they're maybe not like they're hiding something from you, but they're just maybe not entirely open right away. And so you have to kind of like earn their trust and kind of peel away the layers to the characters. I think those are my favorites, the ones with the layers, like both as a viewer, like, because then you get to kind of discover new things about them. And also as me, then I get to like reveal little things here and there. And it gives it so much more depth when you're like playing a character like that too.
The elf spy.
An elf spy.
That was one that I remember. That was like that. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And this is from the talented Swarms ASMR.
Swarms.
Is there a story you've written or want to adapt for an ASMR video, but you have not been able to? And I'd also like to know if there's any that were a challenge, but you found a solution in the end. How did you do it? Thanks.
Yes, there is one that I would love to do. This is like fantasy, someday, maybe ridiculous. It's going to sound also like a ridiculous premise, maybe. So I don't know if viewers or anyone, NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. Mm-hmm. I used to do that consistently. It's fun if you like to write, just kind of do something. And one year I wrote a Scarlet Pimpernel retelling that's modern. And it's really fantastical, but also like dystopian. And I would love to make that a series one day and like realize it because I've always, imagined it, what it would look like in my head playing it out. So maybe I would do that. It's just really long. So I'd have to probably figure out how that would work. But it would be really cool, if I had to choose something. And I would say a flashback. I did a flashback in one of the Immortal videos and I wasn't sure how that was going to work. And it worked out. It looked really good. And I thought it was going to look horrible when I shot it at first. Yeah.
All right, let's chat. And did you have any other thoughts there on that one? Anybody else? All right, moving on.
Good. We move on.
Let's move on. All right, we've got a ton of others, so there won't be any problems there. This next one here is from the great Amy K. ASMR. How do you keep your lore, details, plot points, etc. organized? What is your process for naming characters or cities?
Charles Dickens was so good at that, wasn't he? Naming characters. And Martin Chuzzlewit, Ebenezer Scrooge. I don't think has there ever been a character that's been better than Ebenezer Scrooge.
Right. It just feels right. It just feels like who he is as a character.
Oliver Twist. Yeah. So I think Dickens was particularly good at that. I when it comes to, I'm quite lucky in terms of lore because my characters inhabit different worlds, so I can skip that. But in terms of the naming, I like to, what this character is called Sir Jonathan Copperhand, which if you've ever played Cyberpunk 2077 is based off Johnny Silverhand. And I just like this tiny little, Fairweather Industries is one of the sort of dystopian role play stuff that I do. And I based that off the fact that they started off as a cryogenics company. So Fairweather, even though you're being frozen. And it just has this sort of ominous and yet friendly feel at the same time, which is exactly what they are. So nothing too clever there, but I guess I try to go down the Dickens route if I can, but no one is ever as good as him.
Yeah. Well, for the first part, the organizing lore and plot points and things like that, I have several different notebooks that are all filled with different things. And sometimes I will just especially because my story has been, it's going on for almost 2 years. Oh my gosh, almost 2 years now. That's a lot of videos and it is a lot of story. And so every once in a while, I'll just sit down and I'll be like, okay, what has happened in the last 3 months or something? And I'll just go and list. And then as I make videos too, if I say something, I might even not totally plan on saying it, but because I know where the story is going, I might just hint at something and then I'll write that down, be like, okay, I said this in this video, so don't contradict that. Or the viewer knows that now, so I definitely kind of keep notes as I go. And then every once in a while, I do need to go back and watch one of my videos, especially ones that are more plot heavy too, and be like, oh, okay, so this character said this, so now we know this. Or if I just kind of offhandedly mentioned a secondary character, I go back and I'm like, okay, what was that innkeeper's daughter's name? I actually just had to do that the other day because we're going to a town that we mentioned before. And I was like, okay, I said her name, but I don't remember what it was. So things like that, it's nice to at least have a record in all of my videos. And then as far as naming characters, I also kind of go by feel like the vibe of a character. Sometimes I do like name study things, like, you know, kind of old English names or old Gaelic names that meant this word or meant like this kind of feeling. It depends on kind of the race of the character too, whether they're an elf or a dwarf or something like that. Like dwarven names have more of like a Norse root to them, and elven names are a little more whimsical feeling, I guess. And sometimes I just kind of start like putting letters together until it sounds good. And then sometimes it's more of that historical research. So it's kind of a little bit of both, I guess.
Okay, great. That was really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's move on to the next question here. And it is from Sleeping Artist ASMR, who is also really great. Go check her out. How much do you script and how much do you wing it with dialogue? Do you plan ASMR triggers? But I think we answered this a little earlier, but do you plan the ASMR triggers, build them in, or just let things flow organically?
I don't script. When I first started, I did script, and then I had a lot more cuts because I was angry that I didn't get the words out exactly how I wanted to. So nowadays, I mostly, like, I'll plan out a video and I might make myself like little bullet points or something like that. But for the most part, I try to, you know, what would this character be doing in this space? What would they be saying? What would they be thinking? And just kind of let it flow. That to me, it's more natural. It's fewer cuts, and I can kind of loosely connect points that I want to include in the video while it still feels like natural and conversational, I suppose.
I'm the same. I'll write like an outline, like, okay, I really want to accomplish this, and this in this video. Here's where the triggers are going to go, have all of those things laid out. But I'm really bad at following scripts. I would rather just improv it most of the time because it does, seem more natural. You definitely don't have as many cuts. I agree with Sage on that one. But at least for me, it just seems like you're having a more natural conversation with the person that the viewer that you're supposed to be bringing into this when you do that, at least for me. So I totally. Definitely don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like another thing, like if you're doing a video where you're supposed to just be kind of slice of life, or like you're supposed to be just kind of having a conversation, we don't script our normal conversations, and we don't always say things perfectly. Sometimes we stutter. Sometimes we say, sometimes we trail off and forget what we were saying and then start saying something else. Like a normal conversation between people is not perfectly scripted, and it doesn't always go in one linear direction. Sometimes it jumps around a little bit. And so, being able to ad lib and being able to incorporate that into a video, it does just make it feel like it's something that's really happening.
I probably script about 70% of my videos.
Oh.
So I'm the opposite of that.
Okay.
It was a cold, bright day, and the clock struck 13. I think where I liked it, I think that's 1984. I can't remember exactly how it goes. Oh, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. I think your first impression is key, right? Some of the best lines. So I think it's important to make sure you get off to a great start. And as part of that great start, even though a lot of my videos will start with hello, but scripting that first little bit out. And then in terms of how you define scripting, I have these anecdotes that I place, and maybe it won't say script, but it'll be, I'm going to talk about this one thing for a couple of minutes. So I'm not going to exactly plan where it's going to be, but I almost collect anecdotes that I can place in there. But I agree, I wouldn't want to script the whole thing. And if you looked at my scripts, you would probably say, that is not a script. You took it and I said, okay, here's your script. That wouldn't be
Yeah.
the whole thing, then you don't get that natural interaction. I think you do have to have that. Some of the best things I've come up with during the video. And I'm just like, I did a video with this. This is, and one of the things I came up with was like, bats. It won't make sense to you right now. It probably won't make sense unless you ever watch it. But I remember thinking, oh, that's really good. I wish I'd sort of conceptualized it a bit better. and I'd done it properly because I could have done more with it. Oh, well, you know, at least I've got it in there. So I do come up with things during the heat of the moment, especially when you go, this is going to go for a full hour, this video. And then I'm at 75% of what I have to say. And then I look at the clock and there's like 6 minutes have gone. Trips out of the window, you ad-lib. So,
yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I've had a few videos that like literally have ended completely differently than I thought they were going to. It doesn't happen very often, but there are some times where like I'll have a plan and I'll just start going and it'll end somewhere totally. It's like, I don't even know what's happening. And it's fun though. Like it's those are some of my favorite videos. And I'll end and I'll like press done and I'll be like, that was so great. Like, that's awesome. And it totally like wasn't something planned at all. Sometimes the unplanned things can be the most fun.
Awesome. I'm like taking notes here myself stuff because I was actually that Sir Walter Raleigh video. I didn't have a script. I was like, oh no, this just doesn't feel natural.
If you didn't have a script, I'm so impressed.
That was what it is. I did like with the things you said. Like you have the key points, but you know, essentially not having like almost having the dialogue fits you into a box that it makes it kind of more rigid, especially with a performance. You know, it's nice to have that be able to sort of free flow and especially with ASMR. I don't think people hold you to the same like specific standards that they might in another scenario, which is kind of nice as well. Okay, but we have about 4 questions in 10 minutes, so I want to just fit these all in here. Well, I think we should be able to do it here because some of them are a little short, but I want to just make sure we have time for everybody. So this is from Lauren Wright's YouTube, and I think they're a producer writer for ASMR, I believe. So how do you approach writing antagonists for ASMR? And do you find yourself toning them down? Do you have any reluctance towards this kind of content?
I actually love playing evil people, which is so weird. Probably because I seem really like, oh, hi, how are you? I always love playing evil people and really mean girls, which is again, maybe that says something about me. It's fine. I guess I suppose one of the characters I have is a little girl who basically kept the viewer in her basement, and she's possessed by a demon. And that was probably the most evil I've made a character, and thought I was going overboard because I ended up finger painting in blood. And whatever.
Wow.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Just normal ASMR things.
Whatever. It was for Halloween.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah. But I suppose that's like extreme. I guess I'm sort of like, there's a spectrum for me, and that's like my extreme. And then I'll play like a cold character, and that's not so like bad, you know. And I'm obviously less reluctant to play that kind of character than I am like a murderous demon possessed little girl all the time. But you know, it's fun to experiment, and if you have like a weird idea, I don't really shy away so much for going for it and seeing how it will go, I suppose.
Totally. I love playing villains too. I love it. I love it so much. I guess I don't have like a lot of straight up villains on my channel, but there have been a few that have been so much fun to play. And her part of the question about like, do you tone them down at all? I mean, obviously, like in ASMR, you're not going to have this like big, loud, booming villain, but like you don't always have to have a big, loud, booming villain. Sometimes the villains who are calculated and maybe even a little soft-spoken and even a little bit charming can be terrifying and are amazing. And they're like, they're evil, but they're evil in a way that is still so captivating and is so interesting. And those are the villains that are so fun to play. The ones that really have a good mind behind them, and the ones who are not just evil for the sake of evil, but who have the motivation behind what they're doing in a way that they don't see themselves as the bad guys. You know, they see what they're doing as right. And being able to play that, like as an actor, is amazing. Like being able to put yourself into the shoes of somebody else and realize that like, if I was this person in this circumstance, and this is how I was raised, and this is what I know about the world, I would probably think the same thing. And I would be doing these same things. Like, we're all a product of all of our histories, like we were talking about in the very beginning, like all history is a story. And so all of these villains have these stories, and being able to really dive into that and figuring out why a villain is that way and what makes them that way and what makes them tick. And also like what their motivation is so much fun. I love that. I love it so much. I obviously, like, not everybody in ASMR likes to watch villains, and like, that's okay. That's not for everybody, and that's fine. So like, I think if you're going to do a villain character, make it obvious in the title and the thumbnail. But no, I don't think that there's a need to like shy away from things at all. I think it's really fun.
I'm a goody two shoes, I think. I did a collab, filmed it recently, where I was probably the first villain I ever did. It's going to be a cool little collab. But I managed to do my first Kubrick stare. That crazy sort of.
Oh God.
In general, I don't think I do villains, or at least my characters don't realize they're a villain.
Join the dark side, Paul. It's fun.
Yeah, come over.
You do it so well. I couldn't do it justice like you guys do.
Oh, thanks.
Thank
All right,
you.
so let's move on to the next question here. So the next one, okay, so I think this sort of touches on some things we've already spoken about. The question is from Kid Voodoo, and Kid Voodoo asks, what type of character has been the most challenging to play or make into an ASMR format? What sort of inspiration do you take when creating videos? And are there any channels or artists you would recommend to people seeking your genre?
Well, the inspiration one, I think we talked about that. It's kind of from each other, from so many other people in the community who are inspiring. And, even if we all do storytelling, we all tell stories in different ways. And so it's fun to just like see different people's styles and the variety within the genre. As far as taking a character that was hard to create like into ASMR, I have one video that like, it was near the beginning of a series where we were going to a new city, and I wanted a video that was just going to be like sort of a transition into the city. And I was thinking, well, this is a medieval city, so like what kind of people would be there? And my brain went town crier, and I went ASMR. I'm not going to yell at the viewer, but my brain said town crier. And so I said, fine. So it took a little work, but I created a town crier video in ASMR, which is just like, I don't know. My brain wouldn't shut up about it. So I had to do it, but it actually like, it turned out kind of fun. And it was just somebody who, knows the news of the city. And so can kind of like direct you to different places and tell you things that you need to know and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, shouty characters are hard, aren't they?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The ones that I were like, oh, this character will be so great, but he's far too loud.
Yes.
How can I get him to, if you make them sound quiet, it would just be ludicrous.
Right. It's not that character anymore. Yeah.
I will say I give Paul a lot of credit for doing historical, base ASMR, because one of my recent videos is the first historical character I've ever dared try play, and that's Julie d'Aubigny, who was like this swashbuckling opera singer who stole nuns from convents in the 17th century. And I really love her as a person. But I thought, if I do this, it's got to be also someone that we don't have a lot of information about. Like, we don't know their whole life, because you can kind of fill in the gaps, take some license. And sure. I'm just, I love history. I read a lot of it. I know a lot. I love the weird parts of it, but I love I'm so afraid to mess up certain pieces of it, if that makes sense. So that was kind of a debate. I had that idea a long time ago, and I debated about it for a while, and then just thought, why not? Gotta do it.
Gotta do it.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta.
Okay, let's move on to the last two here because I think that'll push us right towards the hour, a couple minutes past.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, okay, great. So this one's from. Okay, so we've answered the second part of this one before, but I'm going to read it. But the first part actually is something I was going to ask. I'm going to mispronounce this for sure. Chalibius? Okay. Have you written, created stories in other mediums before? If so, how does storytelling for ASMR differ, and how is it the same? So I think we've answered the second part, but the first part, have you written or created stories in other mediums before?
Yes, I have done that. Definitely different. Like I was talking about NaNoWriMo, I've been published in short story anthologies before, science fiction leaning. And this is very different because sort of what I was saying in my previous answer about taking something I've written and really spent time on and love and like can immerse myself in my own mind into, that it has to be digestible, I think, because you don't want the person who is watching to leave. You know, you want to best engage them. You want to make a connection with them. And a lot of, you know, there is like a sweet spot I find with like time that people will watch and what they're looking for. And I think just trying to disseminate something like a more traditional, you know, fiction story that you've written into something that is more summarized into to an ASMR format is interesting. So I don't find them the same, but I think it can be done.
Yes, I've written a lot of short stories, and I draw on them all the time. I just steal from myself and go, hey, that was all right. Rubbish. And then I'll just do lots of sci-fi, lots of fantasy stuff. Problem with my short stories is nothing happens in them. I'm more than happy to share an example, actually, but it's sort of, well, nothing happens in them. It's just there's not much dialogue, which is a bit awkward to steal from. But, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I haven't done a lot of writing. I wrote a few like short plays, like 10 or 30-minute plays when I was in college. So that was something that is like I'm kind of able to pull on from ASMR, is having something that's dialogue heavy, but also having the actions kind of worked into it. I guess when I was a kid, I wrote stories all the time. I had notebooks full of different stories. And a few of those characters have kind of trickled into Whisperwind, versions of them at least, maybe a little more, you know, fully developed. But there's some inspiration from like 12-year-old Sage. Yeah, there's a little bit.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to this last question. I'm gonna actually tack on my last question to this question as well. But this one's from Lesser Atwin. I might mispronounce that one there. But it is, what is your dream project, unlimited time or budget? And then to add to that, if you have any maybe you have some final thoughts you also want to give to the audience as well, just about storytelling and ASMR in general as well. As, you know, we can use this question to close us out here a little bit.
I think if I had unlimited budget, I would do some grand sci-fi type thing. Because obviously you've got the special effect. You know, actually, if I had a limited budget, what I would like to do is a collab.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Everybody together.
Totally. Like on location. Oh, that would be cool.
And maybe film
that'd be so cool.
5, 10 all at once. You know, and it makes me even think, you know, would ASMR theatre work if you had a big enough cast? I don't know, but I think getting all those talented people together and having them make lots of things in person, because it's great to have collabs that aren't. It's great to have collabs that aren't in the same location. It takes a lot more editing, but I think also there's a certain element of being able to react to an actor.
Right.
Makes you a better actor. You know, if you're seeing someone who's acting really, really well, you're like, wow, I actually genuinely feel whatever you are making me feel here, and it makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's what I'd want to do. And if I was going to round out, I would probably say something like, there would be no storytelling if there wasn't somebody to listen. And so I would thank you very much, Nathan. I would thank everybody who listens here today, our ramblings. And yes, I just say thank you very much for taking any interest whatsoever in my work.
Yeah, an unlimited budget. I love the idea of having people together too. That was my first thought, is like flying people out, especially like if it was just something like really phantasmical and you could do all these different things with it. It's like one of the first things you learn in acting is that 80% of acting is reacting, like what you were talking about. It's so much playing off of what else is happening. And like, you might have lines in a script where like you say this and then you say this, but there are things that are said in between. And so why do you say this after they say this? There's so much that you can pull from like being with other people. So that would be really, really exciting to actually get like a full-fledged, like lots of talented people in one place. Even if you don't have like a solid plan, you get that much creative energy in one place and like something amazing is going to happen. Like you just know it. So yeah, that would be fun. Like being able to fly people out, costumes, props, all that kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, that would be fun. Yeah. And then just to kind of sign off, round it out. I mean, I would say the same as Paul, like when I started my channel, I was like, maybe I'll get like 100 subs. I don't know. Like maybe I'm going to post and this is something that like I'm excited about, but nobody else is going to pick up on this. And maybe I'll just kind of be, talking to myself and just get crickets. And the amount of support that has come my way has just been so mind-blowing and humbling. And the fact that like people will comment and say like, thank you for giving me a safe place. That is just, it's so meaningful. It's beyond just, making videos and posting them on the internet for anybody. It's really like connecting with individuals that makes it the most fun and the most exciting. And like my story wouldn't be half of what it was if I didn't have the people who watched and the people who responded and who engaged with it and looked forward to the next video. Like that is so inspiring and is part of the journey as well. So thank you.
I'm really sold on this. Get a big group of people together idea.
Right,
so that's probably going to be what I would have to
Trick is to get in first.
Yes.
Right. Let's go. That'd be such a weird, like a theater retreat or something. It's been a really long time since I did like something like that. That's how I feel like it would be, or like improv or something. That sounds so fun. Yes, that. Let's do that. Okay.
Let's do that. Unlimited budget.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. I would say, yes, echo very heavily what Sage said about, I am continuously surprised and very thankful that people watch my things, my videos, are receptive to my ideas, the things that I do, because they really aren't always like other people's things, which I think is what is also great about storytelling ASMR is we're all sort of doing something different at any given time, but we still support each other and we can relate. And just, how incredible this medium is to have found as someone who likes to just create things and see where they go.
Yeah.
And just, how many great storytelling creators there, ASMR creators there are out there, and just general ASMR creators. It's such a wonderful genre field.
Totally.
All right, great. Well, I think that's going to actually conclude our panel today. I want to actually go ahead and say, everyone, I hope you take a few moments to go check out the channels here of Whisperwind ASMR. We have Theyseekherthere ASMR, and we have Tinglesmith ASMR as well. We'll have the links available for you as well. So thank you so much for joining us. That was super enlightening. I have like notes over here that I wrote for my own stuff. I was learning. And it was just really cool to hear all your stories, and we're so appreciative that you took time to share that with us. So have yourselves a great one. And once again, thank you so much for joining us for this TingleCon 2021 panel for storytelling.
Well, thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks.